KJ here, and I just wanted to thank you for checking out our first discussion episode, and just wanted to let you know that you might want to wear headphones on this one. The way that I set up my audio when we recorded this week wasn't perfect, and Francis's audio wasn't coming through quite as clearly, and I didn't think it would be that big of a deal, but it turns out it was really hard to fix. So I did my best with it, but I'm still new. If anyone has any suggestions on how to remote record better, please let me know. Message me on one of my social media platforms or one of the podcast social media platforms. Just slide me a DM, send me an email, something like that. I will take all the help I can get in that respect. It was just so good to have Francis on, and I really wish that her audio had been better, but it wasn't there this week. The whole episode as a whole isn't as good of an audio quality as it typically is. Just, settings weren't proper this week, and that happened. But it's still a really good episode, so I did still want to put it out, and I just did my best with it. And thank you so much for sticking in. Again, you just might want to wear headphones for this one.
And Sam and Dean are super surprised in episode 20, Dead Man's Blood, when John shows up. He's not there to see them or even really pay respects to the old hunting friend Daniel Elkins that they showed up to do. But he's there to get the magical kill any monster for good gun, the Colt.
You're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast. Hi, I'm KJ. My pronouns are she, her, and this is the podcast where I recap the show Supernatural with my fellow fans and we discuss our supernatural opinions.
I'm Meredith. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm excited to have a discussion.
That's great. Francis, how about you introduce yourself as well?
Hey, I'm Francis. My pronouns are she and her, and this is my first podcast, so I'm super excited to get started.
We're so excited to have you. You're the first guest we've had on that I don't personally know in real life, so I'm really excited about that.
Oh, yay for me.
Yeah. I'm meeting so many great new people on TikTok, and you're one of them, so that's so exciting.
By extension, I'm meeting people.
Yeah. And this week we are going to be talking about John Winchester's whereabouts in season 1. Reminder that the discussion episodes are open to all seasons and episodes, and this may contain spoilers from episodes including and beyond last week's recap of season 1, episode 4. I think for most of the spoilers for this week are going to be in season 1 and maybe a bit of season 2, but any season is up for grabs if we feel that it needs to be talked about. For me, the very first thing that happened when I went to write my notes was that I realized the pilot incorrectly placed Halloween on like a Friday or Saturday, when in 2005 Halloween actually happened on a Monday, which means there was not a weekend to happen. But that's okay. Like most things in season 1, and especially in the first 2 or 3, you just gotta go with the flow.
Yeah, and just accept that this is an alternate universe where some tiny little things are different.
Where Halloween in 2005 was on either a Friday or a Saturday. Feel free to jump in, by the way, and tell me things or add things or make snide comments about anything I said.
I'm good at the snide comments thing.
It's why we love you. So, John left wherever he was before he was in Jericho, California, around the end of the first or beginning of the second week of October to check out a series of disappearances that were happening in Jericho, California. And he was on his own as Dean was on a different case in New Orleans. So he called Dean around October 29th or 30th and left him a voicemail. The voicemail was, Dean, something is starting to happen. I think it's serious. I need to try to figure out what's going on. Something inaudible. Be very careful, Dean. We're all in danger. And then he just hung up and refused to speak to his children for like a year.
Father of the year.
What happened between John left wherever he was and got to Jericho and this voicemail, and what happens after is for us to figure out in this episode.
Yeah, we have some clues throughout the season, but a lot of it's left up to the...
Yeah, a lot of it is just gonna be... So Sam confirms that John spoke to Joseph Welch, who's the husband of the late Constance Welch, suspected woman in white, a few days before Sam got there, so probably also around October 28th to 30th, probably around the same time that the voicemail was left, which makes sense.
So we know from that and from his motel room that he actually was investigating this case. And
he started. He did start doing something. As we discussed on our first episode of the podcast, it's probably better that John left town, because not sure he would have survived an encounter with said woman in white. Not exactly the most faithful man on the planet.
Oh dear.
Anyway, while they're in Jericho, Dean comes in possession of John's journal, which contains coordinates which are apparently in Blackwater Ridge, Colorado, which again, they aren't, but whatever.
Yeah.
I have to stop being mad about it eventually. It's just not that hard to pick up a map. Even in 2005, maps existed.
Yeah, but I just feel like most of us aren't really looking up the coordinates unless we're doing podcasts.
Well, that was before the show lasted for 15 years and became a cultural phenomenon.
It's true.
It also shows that make up locations, but for something like this where people like legitimately want to take road trips, you might want to have real places.
Even if you're just gonna, if you're gonna write coordinates, at least have the coordinates be in the correct state. I'm pretty sure these coordinates are in Arizona.
We could go to Arizona.
Not right now, it's too hot.
It's very hot everywhere.
Alright.
The joys of July.
And global warming.
And then apparently ever since the voicemail that John left for Jean, his phone was deactivated temporarily. He left a voicemail and just went, I'm gonna turn this completely off. But it was reactivated around at least a couple weeks later when Jerry Panowski called, only to get John's voicemail. But the voicemail had been updated to redirect anyone calling for help to his son Dean. So he was presumably still alive to set up that voicemail message. In episode 9, Home, it was confirmed that John was alive and just choosing not to contact his sons. Jean called John very upset and left a voicemail asking for his father to at least reach out and pick up the phone, and received no response. It's revealed to the audience at the end of the episode that he did go to Lawrence to meet them, but just avoided contact with either of them. He went there to make sure that they were fine.
Missouri wasn't very happy with him.
Oh no, Missouri was not happy, because like the rest of us, she's wondering why he can't just talk to his damn children.
It's like, no, I must stoically do my quest.
And then in episode 10, Asylum, John texts Dean and sends the boys on another case. Later, when they're sleeping, Sam answered Dean's phone and finds that John's calling. And that call continues in episode 11, Scarecrow, where John tells Sam that the same demon killed Sam's girlfriend Jessica and Sam and Dean's mom Mary, which the boys had pretty much worked out for themselves about when Jessica was killed 10 episodes previous, but thanks for the confirmation, Dan.
Nice to know it's not multiple demons running around with the same MO.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
A connection with that between Missouri's visit with John and then him confirming that Jesse was killed by the same demon.
Interesting.
Missouri, and he's saying that he's not going to contact the boys until he figures out the truth. I wonder if maybe the truth he's looking for is if there's a connection between Mary's death and Jessica's death.
That's interesting, and that would make sense, because then, an episode later, basically, he gets in contact with them.
Yeah, that would make more sense if he didn't want to talk to them until he had, more things to talk to them about.
And that's an interesting phrasing, too, because in his journal, I think when he was writing about visiting Missouri the first time, he said, I went to Missouri and she told me the truth, or something like that. Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's probably exactly it. Missouri probably laid some shit out for him.
Exactly.
I love Missouri so much. Partially because I'm a Grey's Anatomy fan, but also just her character is a delight. Anyway, John tells the boys to stop looking for him. He'd rather they take on other hunts and help other people while he goes after the demon by himself. He's presumably calling from somewhere in California at the time. At least that's where the phone number says he is. It's unclear if John had even left California aside from his trip to Lawrence, Kansas, because he was in California originally when he went missing. So maybe he's just been hanging out in different parts of California this whole time. Maybe not. Who knows?
Maybe demons just like California.
Maybe. Either way, Sam plans to go there and find him, but ultimately decides to stay with Dean after Dean almost dies.
Yeah.
Good times.
Which episode was that? That was the Faith Healer episode?
That we're gonna talk about that next. This was just in Scarecrow when they split up for a little bit because Sam was like, I'm going to find Dad, and Dean's like,
right.
Dad told us to go do something else.
And then we met Meg.
Yes. The joys of Meg.
She's a delight, isn't she?
I mean, yeah, she kind of is. Demonic, but still a joy. And then we do get to episode 12, Faith, where John does something even worse than driving to Lawrence without talking to his children, and that's just going back to ignoring them again, even when Sam calls to inform John that Jean is literally dying.
Yeah, we get to see more of those wonderful parenting skills.
That John so clearly possesses. Sam is pretty determined to find something to kill Dean, even on the voicemail, but there's no real indication that Sam is going to find anything to save Dean's life, and John doesn't seem to so much as call back, let alone show up.
Yeah, he's got this weird combination of, neglecting his kids, but, seeming to trust them with their own lives, but, not trusting them with anything else.
Yeah, you can go hunt monsters, but you can't help me with the demon, and...
That's for big boys.
If you're dying, I don't really care, but also if you let anything happen to your brother, then I'm gonna be super pissed at you.
You got this, sport.
Yeah. What John will, in fact, show up for is a call that the demon Meg is linked to the demon that killed Mary and Jessica. That call gets him rolling right into town to see his son.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it doesn't show up when Dean's dying, but Sam calls us these two demons are connected, like, he's there. In Sam's case, it's the first time he's seen his son in years, based for this. Hasn't bothered to visit his son, like, any other time. Although apparently he has been, like, doing drive-bys. He just hasn't actually, like, seen his child and talked to his child.
Stalker dad guy.
Yeah, just drove by to make sure he was alive. Didn't bother to, like, knock on the door.
Emotional constipation runs in the family.
The emotional constipation stems from John. I mean, maybe it stems from John's father, to be fair, but more from John, because John could have been a better dad.
That's one way of putting it, yeah.
So, yeah, John arrives in town, and he says that he's planning to completely kill the demon, not just exorcise it back to hell, he's, like, gonna kill it dead. But that he wants... Yeah, he wants the boys to stay out of it so they can't be used for leverage against him, and I forget what exactly happened in that episode, but I believe that was exactly what happened, so they agree to go their separate ways. John then sends Dean to Fitchburg, Wisconsin to hunt a striga, which John missed in about 1987 to 89, that John knows will be seen by Dean as unfinished business, even though it wasn't Dean's unfinished business, it was John's.
It's great. We're gonna blame you for this.
We're gonna blame a child for being left alone with another child in a town with a monster in it. And Sam and Dean are super surprised in episode 20, Dead Man's Blood, when John shows up. He's not there to see them or even really pay respects to the old hunting friend Daniel Elkins that they showed up to do. But he's there to get the magical kill any monster for good gun, the Colt.
And that's an interesting episode.
Yeah. Sorry you're dead.
Condolences. And that's an interesting episode to watch because it's where we like really see them butt heads for the first time.
Oh, for sure. And that's when they're not. That's like the first time where they're just like not happy to see their dad. They're like mad about it.
Yeah, they kind of worship him in some ways, but also like on what level they really know that their dad is abusive and just a very, very unhealthy relationship.
My notes literally say Sam and John have suddenly remembered the years of resentment between them and are not having a good time.
Yeah.
And Dean is struggling to keep the peace when it's clear that their dad is about to abandon them again. He was gonna try and get them to get along, but then he realizes that John is about to ditch them again, and then he's pissed.
And I like seeing that because like we get the sense that this is how it goes. Like Sam and John are butting heads. Dean's trying to keep the peace,
and then John does something that Dean's mad about, and Dean's like, maybe not.
Yeah, and like Dean was the oldest, like the good son. You feel like he doesn't really rebel often.
No.
We've been getting that for like the whole season.
The thing that John is mad at them about is the fact that they saved him from being eaten by vampires when that wasn't the plan. The plan was to be far, far away. Like, you could be a little grateful that you're not eaten, but if you want to be mad, then okay.
Acknowledge that we did you trained us to do this, we did it well. Please just acknowledge that.
Yeah. John and Sam do have a bit of a heart-to-heart in this episode when they realize that they're alike in a lot of ways, or at least that in the wake of Jess's death, Sam is heading down the same path of revenge and darkness that John went down when Mary died. John freely admits that somewhere along the way he stopped being a father and became a drill sergeant, not just unwilling, but literally incapable of acknowledging the idea that Sam might want something other than being a hunter. So that was good to see. But John was just like, yeah, maybe I did drop the ball on being a father.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just to hear the words even come out of his mouth is therapeutic for me.
It's a bit more of a kind of a realistic portrayal of an abusive relationship where you haven't really fully realized how abusive it is.
Honestly, yes. And I wish the show would make up its mind about how they felt about John, because they haven't. But that's okay. It's okay. It's not really, but there's nothing I can do about it, so we just gotta keep going.
Yeah.
The family is split up again in episode 21 because this family can't stay together for more than 2 seconds. Episode 21, Salvation. John has apparently gotten better at tracking the demons since Jessica's death in episode 1. I guess that gave John a second data point to work from in establishing a pattern, and he passes that knowledge on, but then has to leave to go negotiate with Meg the demon and gets taken hostage. In this episode also is when John finds out that Sam's been having psychic visions visions and is pissed not to have been informed immediately. And, like, how are they supposed to do that exactly, sir? You've been ignoring their calls. You don't come when they're literally dying. Voicemails have a time limit. You can only talk so much. When were we supposed to fit in this? Sam's been having weird dreams and they keep coming true, and they're about people dying. There was no time in there.
He's given them the message all through the season that he does not wish to be bothered.
Yes. Go work over there. I'll call for you if and when I need you.
Ed and KJ here, and we have since recorded the episode for home, so I had rewatched it a little bit more recently. And Missouri Mosley says something about Sam's abilities and his powers to John. So